Hello there and welcome to your exclusive Law and Human Rights program, Project Justice. I am Utaba Umaran. Constitution amendment still dominating the polity as the approved amendment, 24 in total out of the 33 voted upon by both houses of the National Assembly, will be forwarded to the state assemblies. Now, what the Constitution requires is a ratification of 2/3 of the 36 state houses of assembly. Well, last week we spoke to former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, NIALS, Professor Epiphany Azinge, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. That interview comes to you again later in the show. In the meantime, gender activists and women's rights groups have been campaigning against sexual abuse and harassment against the female folk. While there are legislations in place to deal with this problem, enforcement has been quite an impossible task. It is considered a special area of crime, and critics say the Nigerian police, for instance, lack the requisite training and capacity to investigate them. Most cases have been accused of even compromise or outright triviality. For instance, there has been an increase in reported cases of rape, especially of young children, some of whom are as young as 3 years across the country, without a commensurate report on arrest, efficient investigation, prosecution, and conviction. We bring you a story that sparked renewed agitation from activists for a tightening of protection for children.
Blessing Yahaya, now 18, was 11 years old when she met her ordeal, which will remain in her memory.
I was 9 years when they brought me back to Abuja. I stayed in Abuja here. I was in primary 4 then. When I stayed in Abuja here, I was the one that I would do the washing, the cleaning. I'll take the kids to school. I'll do so many things. The boy following me, that is God's will. He was going to the school of 700,000 naira. The other girl was going to the school of 600,000 naira. Why the third one then was going to the school of 60,000 naira? Me, I was going to the school of 770 naira. I would tell my daddy, please, I need to pay my school fees. Oh, look at my uniform is torn. He would tell me, instead of me giving you that money, it's better I use it to take pepper soup. The whole thing started when my mom was 16 years old. She was raped by her neighbor, and that neighbor was my father. The rape produced me. The night of the day I clocked 11 years old. I was lying down, I felt somebody sleeping behind me. I was like, what is it? I turned and I saw that it was my dad.
Unlike Blessing, a 4-year-old was raped by her steward while her mother was away. The angry mother shares the gruesome details.
Not only did he penetrate her vagina, he penetrated her anus. We went to the hospital, the girl was checked, she was in pains. Nobody asked me, how is this girl doing? All they were after was to save Idris Ebilova.
The Child Rights Act was domesticated to protect the Nigerian child from all forms of abuses. For Blessing and the mother of the 4-year-old, they are yet to feel the impacts.
Please wake up and take justice for me, because this thing happened to me right from when I was 11 years old till now that I'm 18 years old. Nothing has been done.
Disturbed by the alarming spate of rape cases, gender activists converged at the Unity Fountain in Abuja to register their dissatisfaction.
A few weeks ago, there was a rape that was reported in Port Harcourt to police, and what the police asked, the person who was raped, police asked, did you enjoy it? It's disastrous. It's a catastrophe that we need to address. They think it's a taboo for people to speak up about it, but I say it's a taboo for people to keep quiet about it. So we have systems that have for a long time failed people by not providing basics. I mean, you go as a rape victim now to the hospital, you still have to pay. Not everybody can afford these services.
The whole of 2017 is locked down for awareness creation, and we've been doing that. People need to know. A lot of times, girls who are raped, women who are raped, do not even know their rights. Most times, the society pushes the blame on the victim. by saying that, why did you wear that short dress? Why were you there at that time? What took you there? You know, they don't even want to address the real matter, the criminal.
There is a need for the Nigerian government to address this worrisome trend with some sort of plan. And for many, the best way to start is with the effective implementation of the Child's Rights Act.
There is no doubt that legislations are in place, which includes components against sex crimes. There is a Child's Rights Act and the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law. However, the continued increase in these crimes is indicative that legislation alone is nothing without a conscious and adequate machinery of enforcement. Now let's return to Constitution Amendment. On Demand is a repeat of the interview with Professor Azinge on the recent decision of both chambers of the National Assembly to reject key restructuring bills.
A situation where you have 68 items on the exclusive legislative list is too much for the center. The center seem to have assumed so much that you can easily decentralize some of those powers for greater efficiency, for maximum participation of the units federating, whether regions or states as the case may be. And that's why people ask certain critical questions. What, for God's sake, are you doing with prisons all at the center? There's a prison in Ogwashuku, there's one in Suleja. Why must that be the business of the center to manage something that is far-flung in Borno? In modern times, I have been a big opponent of the whole idea of state policing. I have opposed it coming up as a lawyer. But for me, in recent times, I've argued that the time has come. We can now, because of what happened or transpired in 1966 or 65, say that in 2017, going forward, that we must continue to be hemmed in by what happened almost 50 years ago.
It does appear that the fear is actually what some persons have about agreeing to some of these points which you are talking about. Because looking at the pattern of voting, we realize that mainly people from the northern region will vote a particular way, while senators and lawmakers from the southern region voted in a different way. More or less a regional system or a sectional pattern of voting. You're talking about fear, and a lot of people have talked about that as well. Why is there that fear, in your opinion?
Well, I wouldn't know why, for instance, if we're talking about state policing, why any section of the country should be scared of state policing. If you have a police command that is controlled from Kano State, it has to be controlled from Kano State. It doesn't in any way affect Oyo more than Kano. So if Kano controls Kano, Sokoto controls Kano, Delta controls Delta, Anambra controls Anambra, how does it in any way constitute a problem for anybody from any other part of the country? I think it equalizes everybody. So why should that be an issue? But we noticed that that couldn't fly. Why should it be the fear of anybody? And we are talking about 35% affirmative action for women. It's not going to be 35 for Lagos and 20 for Niger State. No, it's 35 across board. Do whatever you want to do with your 35 in Lagos. I do whatever I want to do with my 35 in Enugu. Shouldn't that be a problem? I feel that occasionally we blow ethnicism out of the roof in this country for no just cause. If it is a matter of devolution and control of finances and minerals and what have you, I can understand that. Somebody is scared that if the oil coming from the Niger Delta, we are short out of it, maybe the little money we are getting, we are not likely to get any more. That I can understand. But even at that, I believe that things can be structured very well. Once there is an acceptance of devolution of power, possibly, Possibly. Things cannot take immediate effect. I believe that government, the Federal Executive Council, can work it out in such a way that it doesn't become automatic. That will make sure that other states that are not well endowed are well taken care of as far as planning is concerned, so that you can now say that this may not take immediate effect, it may take effect 2 years as the case may be. But what we are trying to say is that there are also other people who feel that they are not well catered for in the polity. Hence, you have all these hate speeches and what have you. Some people are also thinking otherwise. Now, what I think we will be doing at this point in time is to see how we can blend, harmonize all these competing interests. Because for me, philosophically or jurisprudentially, that is what should be happening in a society as diverse as ours.
But Prof, I don't know if you've wondered also, like a lot of people have been thinking too, to whose interest does an over-centralized center benefit?
Well, to anybody who feels that a decentralization will weaken him or his people. That is the only way I can put it. If we want to know who benefits from over-centralization, we will also want to understand the corollary of the argument. Who feels that he or she will be weakened by decentralization? Once you factor out that, I believe the question is clear. Somebody somewhere feels that a decentralization will weaken the person. But we are trying to say a government that wants to harmonize the interests will be in a position to make it known to somebody that no, decentralization to a very large extent is not likely. If you follow, well, many people have argued that oil is automatically a wasting asset. And we have gotten 2040, 2045, most of the European countries want to now work on electricity, cars, and what have you. Alternative energy. Now, so where do we find ourselves in the next 20 years? So even if you think that it is uhuru because decentralization will favor you, have you asked yourself where you will be in the next 20 years or thereabout? You would have fizzled out of the equation. So where do we go to? For me, it is no longer a question of oil. For me, it's a question of what is the alternative for oil in the whole of the country. And that's where solid minerals and other minerals will come into play. Where do you have the quantum of solid minerals in this country? And I bet you it is where many people have fears of not benefiting from oil. If I have oil and I work in such a way that I am not obviously considerate about my relationship with people without oil, one thing that should be at the back of my mind that it is only a matter of time. The other mineral resources will take over from oil, and I will be at the other end. So it is a question of one good turn deserves another.
Now, Prof, we looking at the present context in which you're living in, there's been agitations everywhere. The southeast, there is agitation. Even in the north, there are people who are saying, quit our region. In the southwest, there are people who are agitating. In the south-south, Niger Delta area, there seems to be a relative calm at the moment. But we know how volatile that area has been. And all of this has been because of what you're just talking about now, the need for people to have more control and more access to their own resources. And now that the National Assembly has decided to vote this way, in negation of what appears to be the dominant thinking of many people, does it now give legitimacy to the agitations on the streets now that it appears that the institutional mechanism for dealing with some of these agitations may have failed us?
Well, few points to address. One is to disagree that the dominant view is voted against, because the dominant view is what has prevailed. Whether it is for purposes of election, whether it is on voting at the National Assembly, whatever you think is the dominant view that prevails. So to vote against a position means that the dominant view has prevailed. So it is not a negation of what obtains in the street. What it means, in effect, is that what obtains in the street is more or less a negation of the dominant view as.
Or could it be a polarized position?
For me, it is not a question of which is dominant. That's why I keep saying that we shouldn't make it appear to be a game of numbers. We should make it appear to be a quest for harmonization of the competing interests. And if you strive to harmonize the competing interests in such a way that the minority position may not hold sway, but the minority view will be given attention in such a way that it can assuage the feelings and the fears of that minority, it doesn't make any difference if the dominant position prevails, as the case is. But where the dominant position prevails in such a way that it tends to negate and disregard the feeling of the minority in such a way that they feel that they are not taken into consideration in terms of equalizing things in the system.
Prof, I asked that question because if you look at the geographical spread of those who have been agitating more for restructuring, you have the southeast, you have the southwest, and you have the south-south as well. Would we call that minority?
Well, if we follow the voting pattern, if we follow the population census rightly or wrongly, if you follow the composition of the National Assembly rightly or wrongly, you find that southwest, southeast, south-south, they are in the minority. You know, in these three spheres that I've enumerated, whether it is the composition of the National Assembly, whether it is the last population census, whether it is in voting capacity, the three southern zones are in the minority. So whatever be the agitation, they are still in the minority. But nobody in a country that calls for indivisibility and indissolubility should take that for granted, regardless of the fact that they are in the minority. Because the minority will always have their say. The majority will have their way. And that's what we have seen. But will it stop the agitation in the streets? No, it will not. It will not. Why would it not? Not because some people lost out, but because things have not been handled the way they are supposed to be handled.
Does it add more fuel to the agitation?
Well, to a large extent, one will pray not. One will pray it does not. But I'm reluctant to imagine that it will not. Not because it will be fueled by anybody, but again by the approach adopted. Like I said, this is something that I imagine would have been delayed a little bit. In order to build up a consensus, in order to intensify consultation, and in order to give breadth and vitality to the whole debate. If we have exhausted that and we come to the National Assembly, I believe that we would have been in a position to imagine what the consensus will be, even before the voting. And to that extent, it will douse the tension to a very large extent. But this came like thunder from the blues. The convergence was not even there. There was no meeting point, nothing. And the next thing, voting. And the items to be voted, devolution of power through the window, this creation of state through the window. So many of those things that form the nucleus of restructuring were thrown out of the window. Hey, somebody will say, wait a minute, what is happening? That certainly, this is the game plan. And that is something that one would never expect it to happen. If sagacity was brought to bear and true politics, real politics was brought to bear, we wouldn't have taken this vote at the time we did it. With the greatest respect to the leadership of the National Assembly, I felt strongly that that voting did not come at the right time.
Would you now support calls by certain people that perhaps we need a constitutional conference so that people who really want us to ask fresh questions, to seek answers into how we relate with each other, how the federal structure should be, we could really discuss? I know we've had a lot of conferences before. 2014, we had the national conference set up by Jonathan. The reports are there, recommendations, very fantastic, are there. But what can really take us out of this logjam, whereby we don't need the streets, the young men agitating on the street, to find answers for us. Institutional mechanisms can be provided through leadership, political leadership, to find answers to this kind of logjam.
Well, I thought that regardless of whatever impression anybody would have expressed or reservation anybody would have had as regards the 2014 National Conference, that we would have been able to use the report as a document for trying to address some of the issues that we are confronting at this point in time. But unfortunately, we did not look at it. I am thinking that we cannot at this point in time be compelled to go through another constitutional conference or even to go through quote and unquote what people refer to as the sovereign national conference, because we have a sitting parliament. And if we believe, as the Constitution tells us, that sovereignty belongs to the people, in other words, power belongs to the people, not from the perspective of the People's Democratic Party, but because the Constitution says that sovereignty belongs to the people. It means that the people represent, the group representing the people now at the National Assembly. And that's why I keep saying that I think we jumped the gun a little bit, considering the enormous power that inheres in the National Assembly, the power of the people, so to speak, that it would have been better for us to stay away from this for a while, and then when we come back, having galvanized the populace to a very large extent, and we have a convergence arising from a consensus from all the competing views, then we would have been able to say that this is the way Nigerians want to go for now. Next time around, maybe we may be able to. But in doing that, we would have been able to assuage the fears of the people. We would have been able to tell the people in the streets that this is without prejudice. We are not doing this because we want to obviously bring in inequality or disequilibrium in the system. We are doing this because we feel that this is the way the dominant position wants to go at this point in time, and we can always revisit this as time goes on.
Professor Ozinge, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure.
Well, perhaps reacting to public disappointment, the leadership of the National Assembly has assured that all hope is not lost as regards the controversial but rejected component of the amendment, at which time there will be, hopefully, a larger consensus building on the matter. Well, that's Project Justice for this week. Do remember to follow us on our Twitter handle. It's @ProJusticeLive. Also like Project Justice on Facebook, and view us also on YouTube. On behalf of the entire production team, I am Uche Balmoran. Thanks so much for staying with us.